Bienvenidos, Ushamdi, and welcome. CMIT 454, sections 6380 and 6382 for the first 8-week term of the spring 2018 semester at the University of Maryland University College. This is the CCNA Security version 2.0 course from Cisco Networking Academy. And this evening's video tutorial is going to kind of pull together the majority of the information that we've talked about so far with respect to creating a security baseline for a Cisco router. Now, one of the things that learners typically ask me about is, if I'm doing these tasks over and over and over and over again, is there an easier way for me to automate this, or to maybe have some sort of a template that I could take and just simply cut and paste onto the Cisco router and then run in order to get it to apply all of the configuration that I would like it to apply. And so that is what this video is going to be about. Now, I do have, and I want to make sure that I pull this up here, I do have a much longer, more detailed conversation about an introduction to tickle scripting for Cisco iOS devices. And while this is going to cover some of that information, it's not going to cover all of it. And ironically, and I hadn't looked at this video in a while, I did it about 2 years ago, little over 2 years ago. This is actually the third most viewed video on my YouTube channel, is the tickle scripting and how to automate common configuration tasks. And so we're going to go ahead and do that right now. Now, the first part of this conversation is going to be around text editors, because we need to create the file in something like a Notepad or a Notepad++ or a text editor. You could do it in what I like to use, and this is actually not for free. You can get a trial version of SublimeText, and this is by and far my favorite tool, hands down, for when I'm doing coding of any kind. The free tool that I would recommend would be Brackets from Adobe. And again, if you Google SublimeText, super easy find. If you Google Brackets, and Brackets had a new release just come out here recently, and Brackets is very similar to SublimeText, but I've always used SublimeText. So we'll start over here, and this right here is pretty much the boilerplate syntax that you're going to use to create your tickle script that you're going to run on the Cisco router. And the reason we need to have it, sorry about that, the reason that we need to have this inside of a text editor, and why you didn't hear me say, oh, we'll use Microsoft Word, is because we need to make sure that we don't end up with those control characters at the end of sentences. It's got to be just a regular vanilla text editor. You could use VI, Emacs. Again, as long as it's a plain vanilla text editor, you're in good shape. Now, very important, we're going to start our script out with TCLSH. Now, this command must be the first line of your file, right? Has to be, because these comments that I'm entering in here, right? And this will make sense when we go to cut and paste it, because remember, we're cutting and pasting it into Cisco iOS, and the file is going to reside simply on the flash. And again, if you had external storage hooked up to it, you could certainly put it on a USB and put it on there that way. But the first line must be TCLSH, because these pound signs in TCLSH, these are comments, right? It should be pretty clear that it's going to be a comment. But the reason that TCLSH must be first is if I had the comments above TCLSH, these would then get interpreted by iOS. And those are going to throw errors up, because iOS does not interpret the hash sign, right, or the pound sign as a comment. So we need to get into the tickle shell, right, which is the nickname for it, and it's tool command language is what TCL stands for, but you'll hear it referred to as just the tickle shell. So now the first TCL command is simply puts, and we're going to be opening a file in Flash, right? So in that storage location, we are going to open this file, and we're opening it for writing. And then you can see we've got this open brace over here, right? And it kind of says, after we have that open brace, that everything after the open brace until we get to the close brace is going to be part of that tickle script. And again, we've got these comments in here, right? And again, all of your iOS config commands are going to go here, and then we get to the end of the file. So again, once I'm at the end of the file, I close my tickle script out, and then I have to say TCL quit. It's very, very important that you get that TCL quit command in there, or else you could end up with unexpected results. You could even crash the router. So definitely make sure that TCL quit goes there. And you'll see we'll end up with a, I believe it just looks like this is what it looks like. We're going to end up at the tickle config prompt, right? Once we enter in TCLSH. So let me clear this. And so let's talk about this for a second, and we'll develop, and I'm going to upload this into the course area, these files that we're going to have that we'll be working with. Now, I've got everything that I want over here, and I'm just going to take a quick look at this here, and I'm pretty sure I'll be able to remember most of this. And so if we were to work with the template, let's do the first thing that we're going to do, and actually let me do a Cloud Z there. So let me cut and paste this. So here's what's going to happen when we go to cut and paste this. So I'm going to grab everything here. Whoops, let's try that again. Maybe one more time. Yeah, my mouse is kind of dying out on me. I'm not sure what the problem is with it. Time for a new mouse. So we're going to go ahead and copy this, and then I'm going to pull up a Cisco router. Now this is a 1941 router here. It's running 15.5 code. And so we're going to say, no, we don't want to enter the initial config. And again, the use case is I've got these settings that I'm putting on every single router in my environment, but I don't want to have to sit there and type it in, and I don't want to have to sit there and cut and paste it in. I want to have some way to quickly get these things entered in. So here we are. We went from user exec, the greater than sign, to privilege exec with the pound sign. So now I'm going to, oh, you know what I just did? Yep, I should not have highlighted that. As soon as you highlight it with secure CRT, so we're going to copy this again. So here's what we're going to do. If I type dir, do I have a file in here called base.cf or base.security.tcl? I don't, but we're going to in a second because I'm going to say paste, and you can see what happens, right? We immediately go into the config. Think of it as the global config for the tickle shell, right? And as you can see here, it has no issue at all with these pound signs because it thinks they're comments, right? That these lines that begin with the pound sign are comments. Then I've got my puts command, I've got some more comments, and you'll notice, what did we not get here at the end, right? It didn't carry over that TCL quit for whatever reason. It's probably the cut and paste. But you want to make sure you get the TCL quit in there, or else bad things can happen. So let's say dir, and there it is. I now have a security baseline.tcl file, and if I was to say more security.baseline.tcl, there's the file, right? So that's what got copied in, including the comments. And the reason that you want to comment your code is to make sure that if someone's following after you, that if they see that file and they take a look at it, they can say, oh, well, this was what Travis was trying to do. So again, the use case here and what we're discussing is, you know, I'm going into all of these routers and I'm setting, when I deploy these routers or when I configure these routers from scratch, I'm setting all of these common settings, right? A lot of things that you do all the time. No IP domain lookup. That's a very common command to run all the time. To set the exec timeout on your console port and the logging synchronous. On the auxiliary port to turn it off, right? And to set it so that you cannot get into the auxiliary port. Right, and we've got this no password here as well. You know, no HTTP server, no secure server, a quick MOTD message, right? And so here's the syntax. These are those iOS config commands I was talking about. So we've got that open bracket here that says everything that follows, this is now going to be my TCL, my tickle commands. And so this is the command, iOS_config, that we use in order to tell the tickle shell to run an iOS command. And you can even see that when we go under the line, right? Like, so if you had to say line con 0, then run commands, is you simply follow the first command to put you under the con 0 config section. You simply follow that with the commands that you would then run under the con0 config section. And so take a look here at what we're doing. And if you were to look at the in-class lab, and again, these are the labs, the supplemental material that I uploaded that we're not actually doing because our course takes place online, but I think it's 2613 that kind of talks about securing a Cisco router. And so here are some of the more popular things that are in that lab that you would set. We can do the SSH configuration, right? I can generate my key, I can change my version, set the timeout, and the authentication retries. AAA settings, right? I can turn AAA on. I can create my specially named method followed by the list, right? The method list here, where first we're going to check the Radius server, then the local AAA database, which is literally the running config, right? And then the TACAC server. AAA authorization exec default local. Again, checking the local AAA database for exec privileges. And then what are we doing here? Oh yeah, and then we're turning the login authentication, right, using that named method list, local DB, for both the VTY and the console lines. And then we're going to set some logging parameters, right? So again, if you have a task that you're doing and you find yourself doing it over and over and over again, right, look to automate that task. And the Tickle shell, the TCL language, is just one way in which you can automate these things. And so again, this is a very, very handy file if you've got 10 or 15 routers that you have to deploy. Really, I kind of put the host name in here as a placeholder, right? Router X. And then you could change the name. And so then literally you would end up changing just the host name is all you would need to change in order to get this config put onto your devices. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm simply going to go edit select all. And I thought there was a select all. Maybe I just don't see it. Selection, select all. There we go. Sorry. All right, so edit select all. I'm going to say copy. And we're going to go over and we're going to put this onto the router. Now, a key point, when I drop this onto the router, remember that it's going to overwrite. It doesn't append. This is not an append operation. That W plus means I am going to destroy this file in order to create the new file. I'm going to overwrite the sec.baseline.tcl file. So let's go ahead and paste, right? And take a look at that. It's dropping all of that in there. And we did get the TCL quit here, and I hit enter, right? So now when I say dir, we see we've got the security baseline TCL file. If I were to say more, security.baseline.tcl, you can now come in and see this is what's contained inside that file. And again, it's simply just a series of iOS config commands that fall between, right, that fall in between this template. And actually, I'm not sure how my TCL quit got there. Let's see if it'll let me walk it back. There we go. It was and that's why the TCL quit wasn't there when I was cutting and pasting. So again, you can see that all of those iOS config commands, you would just drop it in here. And then we've got the closing bracket, right? So we have an open, I guess I said brace. We have an open brace and then a closed brace. And it's between those closed braces that I'm placing those iOS config commands. And then I do my tickle quit to get back to the iOS privilege exec prompt, so that I can then apply this to my router. So let's go ahead. We've already pasted the file in here. We've confirmed that it's actually there. Again, if I was to say more and we were to go all the way to the end, right, we see that end of file comment right there, which is why I had included it. So we know, hey, we're at the end of the file. So to run it, I say tickle shell and then simply the name of the file, sec.baseline.tcl. Now we're going to see some feedback here showing that the configuration commands have been running, and take a look at that. My router name is now -x. So let's say show run, right? And let's see, did everything kick in? So it sure did. Take a look. Service password encryption is there. I've got my service timestamps, right? Because I like to get a lot of information from those timestamps, whether I'm debugging or it's being put into the local logging buffer. Let's see what else we've got. Yeah, the password minimum length of 9. Here's my buffered for notifications, my console warning for logging. There's that enable secret command, right, where we use the script algorithm type. I turned on AAA. There is my named method list, and there's the list of methods that are going to be used. I've got my authorization command here. We'll cruise down a little further. No IP domain lookup. My domain name got set. The username, right? So here is that. I remember we talked about creating a default user account to make sure that you've got some sort of local account that you can leverage to get logged on to the device. So you don't want to lock yourself out. There's those SSH commands that we put in there. Here's my banner, my MOTD, right? And take a look at the command line. My exec timeout, logging synchronous, login authentication local DB, right? So everything looks good. Let's say show IP SSH. Did the key actually get generated? And we know that it did, right? Because we have those other settings, but you can clearly see here that it worked just fine. So if I was to log off of this router, and I'm connected to the console port, and I hit enter, take a look at that. I get my MOTD, and I'm prompted with the username. So we're going to use that fallback account that we had created, admin. And I think the password was admin12345. And there we go. And of course, we got the bad server type error because I pointed at a radius server that doesn't actually, there are no radius servers defined, right? So you would obviously want to make sure that if you did have radius servers that you were pointing at those. So now I'm logged in. Let me type enable to go from user exec to privilege exec. Let's make sure that I get that password, which I think was Cisco12345. All right, and it was Cisco12345. And so that's really it. So here is the boilerplate, the boiler template that you can use. And then all you have to figure out, right, is determine your use case. What are the settings that I'm always doing again and again and again, right? Maybe you're working in a lab environment, and every time you wipe the config off of the router, you want the router to come back up, and then you want to be able to quickly apply a specific configuration, right? So again, we just call this security baseline.tcl. You can name this anything you want, right? I ended in TCL as a best practice so that when I look at the file in the flash directory or on flash storage, that I have a pretty good idea of what kind of file that is, right? This tells me it's a tickle file, right? So probably a tickle script. And again, I will upload this file along with the template file to the course area. And easy enough for you to type out as well. And hopefully this is going to save you some time, not only in the real world, but if you were to move on and take another class where you did have access onto actual Cisco hardware. And doing it with a switch, if it was a switch, you could do the exact same thing in terms of creating a tickle script. Some of the commands might be a little bit different. You may want to do some different things, but again, it's simply the commands that you would run. You precede with ios_config, and then you just put the command inside double quotes. And that is it. All right. Well, I really hope that you found this of value. I hope it's going to save you some time. Excuse me, I hope it's going to save you some time down the road. And that is how you would create a security baseline template with the tickle shell. And when we move on to other tasks like zone-based policy firewalls, right? That's where something like this, basically automating a boilerplate config, could save you quite a bit of time. And then you could go in and standardize as you see fit. And here's what we'll do. We'll come back after we cover the IPS functionality as well as the zone-based policy firewall, and we'll add on, we'll pretend that that's part of our use case, and we'll add those commands into the template, into this template, and we'll build from there. All right, well, thanks for watching, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this. Again, if you want a deeper dive into the tickle shell, I would definitely reference that video. If you're on my YouTube channel, all you would have to do is search for TCL, and it's going to pop up. And that is it. All right, I will talk with you soon.